Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NBS Radio. If you're wondering why I'm doing the intro for today's episode, and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, Robes, you're not the host of this. That's true. Today we have someone who is hosting their first ever show, and I'm glad to be joined by them today. So, Picairn, go ahead and take it away.
Yes. So welcome to a new episode of NBS Radio. I'm Picairn, and I'll be your host for today's town hall. Joining me here is Delegate candidate Robespierre, our Minister of Defense. Hello.
Hi.
So we will run through this town hall with the usual format of examining your plans for each ministry. Before that, I would like to ask you a few questions about your delegacy campaign.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first question, how do you think you're doing in your campaign so far? Are you confident about your chances?
I'd say so. I think for me, having the experience of having ran in elections like this before, I mean, I've ran in elections for all three major elected positions before. I'd say it's going, par for the course as far as what I was expecting so far.
Right? So when I heard about your run, I was quite surprised. Some people managed to find out from signs that you card raffle, but I had no clue about that. And you last served as delegate 3 years ago, from May to September 2021. And since then, you served in various executive positions. In the delegate Kaschovia, you were appointed as Minister of Communication, the Minister of Defense. Can you tell us why you decided to run for delegate again after 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's always, more of a culmination of factors as opposed to like one specific thing that's like, yes, this is exactly why. Maybe it is for some people, but for me, I've always found there's usually more than one reason. Um, you know, with cash being term limited, I think personally, and I would say that many people share this as kind of like their impression of how the terms went. I think Cash was a very great delegate for us, very great leader. And quite honestly, I would hate to see like the government's continuity like drop off the second that he's term limited. So in a way, I mean, there's a part of me that sees it as like a continuation of the current administration, but obviously there's going to be like some definite changes between how he and I just because we're different people. But as far as like, keeping government continuity and things like that, I think that's something I want to make sure that, you know, we have a leader who's equipped for the job, and also just the fact that I've quite liked my last two terms within his government. More so actually than I thought I would, to be fair. I really enjoyed myself in comms and the people that I worked with in comms, you including Ruben and Ara and others. It was a very good time in comms. I think the main reason I decided to run was that it happened to line up at a really good time for me, considering I don't have like anything particularly planned out for my summer. So I'm available, and also just the fact I have like the experience pedigree to match it, so that I can ensure that things, keep going the way they should around here, in my opinion. So I think I'm pretty well suited to that. But yeah, it was a combination of cash is term limited. We need someone who's competent, capable to lead the government, and just it works out for me personally to be able to do it. So I'm happy to help if I can do it. So that was sort of the thought process that went into that. Also, you're right about the whole card lottery thing. Obviously, for some of our more experienced people who, read dispatches and game side stuff, it's a telltale sign whenever the MOD has their WA in TNP. I mean, there are some things that are just like completely unavoidable signs that, like, hey, something is happening, right? Um, but it's also one of those things. Unless you're looking for it, you're not gonna specifically like know. And I just personally, just for like, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with letting people know ahead of time. It's just I don't, I'm more closer to the chest with that, as I have been in I think every race I've ever done. So there's nothing wrong with it, but yeah, I can see why it would be surprising to some people.
All right. Yeah. So from what I know, your leadership style in the past was more collaborative. You would consult with your deputies or staffers before making decisions. But in your delegacy campaign, you have advocated for a hands-on approach. You wrote that you would offer a swift and decisive response, that your goals and policies couldn't be delayed until everyone had weighed in. So why did you decide that a hands-on approach would be more suitable for you as delegate and your previous collaborative leadership?
I think it's just sort of a different environment going from a minister to the delegate. I know that when I was comms minister, especially, I mean, you have people who sign up for articles and then they write their articles, and then you have editors who, make sure that those articles are the best they can be before they're released. And all of that takes time and it takes people's effort and it takes people's creative energy. So I think in the past, I've always wanted to be, like very respectful of that because people don't have to do the things that they're doing. Like that's something I always kind of have like in the back of my mind. Like people don't have to, help us make good articles. They do so because they want to and because they have something to offer. So I mean, I've always appreciated that. I think as far as wanting to talk to everyone and make sure that people are like okay with decisions and stuff like that, it's mostly, so that things kind of everyone feels like they have a part to play because they do. I think that's the case. But also just the fact that I would hate to like spit in someone's face inadvertently after they have already like put all this time and effort and energy into things. But as far as like being more decisive and things like that, I think it is one of the ways in which Cash and I are going to be a bit different, and that's certainly not an indictment on him. I think he did this to great effect, because that's just kind of the person he is. But he's very good with talking internally, but some of that lends itself to us hesitating in a way. I mean, I saw it more than once, and people in cabinet might know what I'm talking about. Things that were ready to go a few more days like before didn't go simply because like we needed one more person to say yeah before he was comfortable with it or this and that, which is fine I think. But as far as like the direction that the war is headed in, I think you do need more of like stronger assertive leadership to be able to just like really run the ship, so to speak. And he undoubtedly did run the ship, but that is just the difference in our approaches. I think that the reason I switched it over to, more hands-on approach is because I believe that's what the situation calls for. I think that's what these times need. So like I'm totally willing to adapt my leadership style to what TNP needs. Because if I were to stay rigid in my leadership style and only do something else and not offer, maybe the hands-on approach that some people might need, then I don't think that would be doing the job to the best of my ability by like refusing to change in a way. Um, and I can do both. I mean, there's just reasons why in the past I preferred one or the other. It just so happens that for this time, I have reason to prefer hands-on as opposed to like collaborative and stuff like that. I think both of the leadership styles at the end of the day like have their merits. Um, I just wanted to communicate to people that like there's going to be very clear directions for things, and people are going to know what the expectations are in day one. And I'm going to build the best team to make sure that those expectations are met. Um, and instead of like sitting on our hands and like, oh yeah, is this okay? Like, are we feeling all right about this? I feel like I will have a pretty high degree of confidence in everything that we do because I'll already know in the back of my mind that we've assembled the best team possible to be able to do that. So yeah, I'll believe in my cabinet just as Cash believed in his. But also, I definitely don't want to second guess everything to the point where we're sort of like paralyzed in this kind of idea of like, oh yeah, is it good? Is it not? I think as long as we do what we need to do, I think it will be good, and I think the results will speak for themselves. So, yeah, I think just the approach that I'm going with suits the situation best. So that's why I suggest that we do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, next question. So, one of the criticisms that have been directed against your campaign was that your last delegacy presided over what was possibly the worst summer law in nation states history, which hampered your administration from getting things done. Now, you're running for a summer term again. The summer 2024 comes with the additional Frontier Strongholds update, which has significantly reduced the amount of nation spawns in our region. What lessons have you learned from your 2021 delegacy and the Frontier Strongholds update that could help you fight against the expected drop in regional activity this summer?
Yeah, Sanjurika, I hope I'm saying that name right, actually asked a sort of variation of this question, which was, reflecting on the previous term as delegate and how that went, or what I learned from it and this and that. I think people have a tendency to underestimate what the summer lull is like. I know that it's been documented how bad it is. I mean, the past terms, like, yeah, there's reasons to, really consider doing things that help mitigate the overall effect of it. I think that in the past we've talked about changing the months that we elect people on in the regional assembly. That's actually been a conversation specifically to get around, number one, make things more convenient, but number two, make it to where the summer term doesn't fall on the same days it does, because a lot of candidates, yeah, they know that it's not the best term for people usually because of the various things going on in the game. You have people who, have other responsibilities in their real lives that they'd rather tend to during the summer than playing the our favorite internet political simulator browser game that is an S. So people have other stuff going on, and I did speak about that in my campaign, basically how I would address that if people weren't able to manage, expectations for whatever reason or another. And I think that's pretty fair. I think that's about what you can ask from everyone. I think the main downfalls last time was just that number one, it took me a lot to come out of that election. That did take a lot out of me. I'll just be pretty frank about that. I think it would have for anyone. It was probably one of the most competitive elections in TNP history. So that obviously does take its toll. But then just the fact of going into the summer lull as a first-time delegate, not knowing what to expect from that sort of environment, I think now I definitely do because I already lived it once. And the experience of it is sort of the best teacher in a way because, yeah, as much as you think that, like, oh, summertime, maybe, people won't have things to do. Maybe they'll be, like, off school or won't have university or things like that. It's like, yeah, that's true for some of them, but then for the vast majority of people, they're going on trips. They've got all these other obligations. So you kind of have to construct your cabinet, number one, with that in mind. And number two, you also just have to make sure that like you pace yourself. That's something I didn't really do the first time around, in part because it was very taxing for me the first time, just to get into the seat. That once I got there, I had like this very short burst of activity as far as like, oh yeah, let's do everything. I want to do everything. This, that, that. I was very excited, fresh faced. Um, and that doesn't exactly lend itself to being at the highest level for like 4 months consecutively, which is what the region needs of the delegate, by the way. I think that they need the leader to be the best that they can be throughout all those 4 months. And if you're good for like 2 months, and I'm not saying that was reflective of the situation, but I'm just saying like as a hypothetical, if you're good for 2 out of the 4 months, I don't really think that helps anybody for the latter 2 months. So I think this time I definitely have the perspective to like specifically avoid, certain things that didn't contribute to our overall success last term that I was a delegate.
All right. Thank you for your answer. Now we will move on with questions regarding your plans for each ministry. First off is communication. You wrote about the need for a new direction for the design team and proposed that the team should be tasked with the creation of ministry-specific infographics for promotion and recruitment. Now, from what I know, the team's membership has diminished quite much due to inactivity and a lack of direction. Do you plan to expand the design team through recruitment, for example, to meet the demand for new designs? And if so, are you going to appoint someone to lead the team and inject it with energetic leadership?
I'm going to sort of answer that question a little bit of reverse order. First off, no, I will not be appointing someone specifically to run that team. We actually did look at doing that back when the design team was first created. We had a quote unquote like team leader, which at the time was in VXL. And I was actually really excited to work with him. And as it went, we sort of eventually never heard from him ever again. I mean, he's active in the WA threads, but he kind of just like dropped out of the executive staff. And it didn't really make much sense from the standpoint of like managing the team because there's deputies, there's the minister, there's the delegate, there's even average citizens who could just ask the team, hey, can you make this? Like we didn't particularly need a team leader. So, no, I mean, if I, as the delegate, were to appoint someone, they would become a government official. There is no reason why we should have a government official to lead the design team. That would be very unnecessary. But I also won't be encouraging my Minister of Communications to appoint a team leader for the design team because we've been there, done that, and it didn't work. It's also just not needed. As far as making the infographics, I think that's really good in the sense that, like, I think at the end of the day, no matter how pretty our dispatches look, and they do, don't get me wrong, they look quite nice and professional. Nobody really wants to sit there and read walls of text. I think infographics are good because they can be visually stimulating, with like the colors, maybe more playful, cartoony designs, which some of them are more professional looking, some of them are more cartoony. I guess that's up to like artist interpretation. But they kind of get you just the highlights, just the, abbreviated version of what you can expect in a given ministry. And it's a lot more digestible. I think when you're going to someone in game side who's maybe not familiar with the longer posts here on the forums, you kind of just need to make things as digestible as possible for them. Not because like they can't read those longer dispatches with more words and this and that, but just because it's a lot more of a pleasant experience if you don't feel like you're bombarded with all these things and you have to decide about something, If you just have a couple of infographics to look at, you can get all the information you need and go about your day, and it's not really a burden on anybody. So I think that creating those infographics are going to be something that we want to do. I know that you, in particular, Picairn, have made two of them for us already. I don't think we'll retread on the ministries we've already made ones for. We've made ones for comms and we've made ones for defense that I have circulated around the RMB in the past. I think we'll just be making them for the rest of the ministries. And as far as art goes, I myself am not very graphically inclined, so it's hard to say like how long those would take. I don't expect them to be like done within the first 2 weeks. It's just something I would like to see us do, not only so we have them, but also so that we can use them during this term. So that's definitely a priority for me. It kind of coincides a lot for me, the way I think of it, with my recruitment goals. It's a lot easier to get people interested in the executive staff if, again, you don't bombard them with information and overcomplicate the choices for them. There's a lot of very talented people in TNP, but if they feel like the bar to entry, or if they feel like, you know, all the things that they have to consider are just too daunting a task, then that can be a turnoff for some people, and I would rather avoid that. So I think infographics are a nice happy medium between, some of the more descriptive, longer dispatches we have, and just, not really giving that information. It's a good promotional tool, I think. So we'll go ahead and do that. As far as the team like shrinking down, I know that you did say that. It's because in February, I believe, that was when Ruben's been Minister of Communication. Since January, they did a little bit of a purge of it. As far as specific team members for the design team, I don't necessarily think that equates to like output the way that you think it would. Like, I don't think the two exactly are correlated. I would much rather have a smaller group of like experienced, reliable hands who just do good work and really get what it's all about than just like a roster of people where maybe only two or three of them actually end up doing it. Like having a larger roster of people to design things for the sake of having that larger roster, I don't think is very helpful. I know that when we started the design team, we did have a lot more people, but I mean, just from the experience, because I'm the one who helped start it. I mean, we didn't all those people that you saw on the table weren't all of the people doing things. So a lot of them were sort of just there in name only. And the inverse of that has happened, where we've had people who have done a lot of the work. I know that Ruben's been doing it. I know that you've been doing it. I know that Bran has been doing it. I know that Pry has contributed a couple things when I've asked him for it. Like we have very talented people who get it. So I just want to give them a direction so that we can really tap into that resource and just make it worth our while in the sense that like setting it up, it's not going to go dormant again.
You mentioned that there has only been one episode of NBS Radio uploaded to its YouTube channel since the year began, possibly because you have been distracted by your work as Minister of Defense. Being delegate, however, is going to be a more demanding job than being minister. So, how do you intend to ensure that NBS Radio will produce more episodes at a regular schedule as delegate?
Well, I think part of it starts with people like you. I mean, we haven't had a new host except for me for quite a while. I know that Ruben's done it sometimes, and you've done it. This is obviously the first time you've done it. But aside from that, we don't have very many people who just regularly host it and have the ability to record. So it'd be great if we could just increase that even by like two or three different people. That just makes it to where there's more opportunities for NBS to be hosted. One of the reasons that I feel like production has taken just such a dramatic downturn is because if I was the primary person who was hosting it and I was doing something else that wasn't directly related to communications, then unfortunately we weren't able to get as many episodes out. I mean, between that and editing, I think Cash has done a pretty good job of editing anything I've handed off to him. It's been pretty good. Um, but yeah, that's the thing. We're really good at radio. Like we make good radio content. I just wish we could do it more often. So I think, many people would like to have that happen, and I think it should be a priority because we have great channels already set up in YouTube and for Spotify. So we have the channels, we have like the distribution channels already for it and stuff like that. We have the audience. If we can get like a more well-rounded cycle of hosts going, I mean, I'll hop on and host when I can. But it can't obviously just be one person. And hopefully within the next term, we'll have some people. I know that some people have indicated to me that they're actually going to be more available, which is the former case of the LOL. Some people are less, some people are more. I've had people tell me that a few of them are going to be more, so I'm looking forward to how that's going to go in columns. But yeah, I do think it's important that we put out radio shows, and I don't want all of them to just be like the roundtable talk show kind of shows. We've had other show ideas, especially ones that I know that I've floated at one time or another, regarding like chess recaps. I actually did. There was going to be another episode this term, but it kind of got lost because I was trying to record chess commentary between a game that I think Cash and I had. It was going to be like a decent sized video of chess commentary. And just the way I recorded the screen didn't end up working out. So, I mean, if we can avoid number one, simple mistakes, and number two, have a greater pool of hosts, then I think that already dramatically increases the output production of NBS. So, yeah, you, Picairn, are helping us get towards that just by hosting this. So, thank you again for that. And also, thanks for the people, all the audience members who are here, because, yeah, even though we had a little bit of a intermittent sort of technical issue, but yeah, appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thank you for that. So now we'll move on to culture. So you wrote that you wanted to connect with our friends and allies by taking the initiative with cultural exchanges, fun events, and other faction-based crossovers. So does this mean that under your leadership, the culture ministry will organize more monthly game nights, chess tournaments, and inter-regional contests with our friends?
I was talking to someone about this the other day, and one of the points that they had made, this was after my campaign was published, they had said that, like the main things that culture does, like the quote unquote main things, which was the weekly events of Music Monday, Theme Thursday, they said, they're just not engaging people the same as they used to. And I would agree with that. I don't think that those events should be like scrapped, but as far as that being the main thing that culture does or could do, I don't think that's like the full extent of its potential. And just for like sanctions purposes, as it turns out, if you make sanctions that say, hey, nobody who, is an enemy of the North can do X, Y, and Z, you have to actually be doing X, Y, and Z to be able to exclude them from it, right? So if you don't have X or Y and you only have Z, then they don't really feel the full brunt of the sanctions. And obviously, you don't do events just so that people feel the extent of your sanctions, right? But like, do you see how it's sort of a non-issue if you don't even have the events to begin with? So in addition to just us wanting to do more events, I think it's a good thing for us to do. It also helps us actually make our sanctions mean something, because in the absence of any kind of events or any sort of like, endeavors by our culture team to do things, number one, it's not as fun, and number two, it doesn't really accomplish the full extent of what our sanctions set out to accomplish. So I can think of some pretty notable opportunities in which we could have done something for culture-related things, and we just didn't, either to, planning crept up on us too fast, or it's just, it's more of a task than you would think. Like, I wish we had something planned for End Day. I think some people were disappointed that we didn't, and it was kind of just like, participate if you want. Like, in the past, we've had that sort of organized, and I wish we would have done that this time around. And also, if we host our own events, then we have the benefit of being able to pick and choose who is invited to them. We can make sure that it's our friends who are sanctions compliant and who, uphold the same values and ideals that we do. And it'll be a fun time for people in these regions. So people who are in regions that are friendly and on good terms with the North can enjoy those events. And that's another attractive feature of being, a region that stands for something and, as some would say, fights the good fight. So I think that overall, having things going on is a good thing. And we often say that, like, oh yeah, culture can just be anything you want it to be. which to some extent is true, but at the same time, it does sometimes need like larger events. Um, and it can't just be like the bare. I consider it the bare minimum, and again, that's not saying anything about the previous like culture team. I do consider like Theme Thursday, Music Monday to be like the bare minimum as far as what culture can do, and that's not saying anything bad about culture. It's just saying I view culture as having like such a higher ceiling that hasn't really been realized for quite a while now. So I would like us to explore that for sure.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move next to. I also wanted to build a stronger offline community by hosting more events in our Discord server. Now, your opponent, Simone, in his town hall, floated the idea of adding more games to the server. Do you also plan to add games or anything else to our server?
We've actually tried to do that before. There's a little bit of background for this. Um, we've so certain servers in NS actually have bots that specifically like run games. The most notable example I can think of is a game called Werewolf. There's a werewolf bot that is, or at least it used to be, in a region like TRR, right? I haven't been there for a while, so I can't really speak on if they still have it or not. Someone in the comments, I'm sure, if they're still there, can confirm. But it was quite a good game. People would play it. It was fairly active. Uh, and at one point we did want to bring it here. We did want to like add more games to the server, and I'm not sure if that's the specific like implementation of it that Simone's talking about. It'd be hard to say. But I know that we've looked at like adding bots that have like games functionality to the server before, and one of the concerns from the admin team has been like security, reasons. Which, I mean, whether you believe that that's like a, you know, legitimate reason or not, it does present a layer of difficulty in like sort of implementing that. So, I mean, it has been tried before. I think that any game we do should not be something that has to like physically interact or have permissions with the server. It can just be like a free game that like, people play on their browsers or something. Haha, kind of like NS, right? But like we've played other games before, just as a community, and it's been like pretty fun. I know back when Town of Salem was like web based. I don't think it is now, but it used to be able to be web based, and it was quite fun to do that. Community game nights are cool. I think I saw in reaction to Simone's plans somebody say, because I know he's changed it a couple times, so it's hard to say like which, without directly looking at it, which plan he's going with like at this particular moment. But somebody said like I pity the culture minister who has to run daily events, and it's like, yeah, I don't think that that's exactly realistic for us. I think that in addition to some of the larger scale events, it's cool to build an offsite community as far as people VCing can be like a good, strong sense of community if people are talking. Or maybe, yeah, people do play a game. I like how Discord now has like the activities function, because I know we've had people play chess through Discord before, and it's been fun. People have watched YouTube videos together or listened to music together. And like those are things that people can do together in Discord without running afoul of some of the security concerns of the admin team. So I guess it heavily depends on how you implement it. But yeah, I'm definitely not opposed to more games. I think it's cool if we as a TNP community have something to do and something to enjoy and something that keeps us together, except for NS. Because as we saw, when NS goes down, it was quite quiet around here. And, that's something that kind of indicated to me, like, hey, maybe we need to work on this. So, yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I see that. So now we move to our next part, which is defense and then foreign affairs, my favorite parts. First, defense. Let's talk about recruitment. In the defense section of your platform, you suggested several methods to improve our recruitment, which include increasing our overall visibility and highlighting the fun and camaraderie of participating in raiding and defending as potential methods of recruiting more soldiers. What are some ways that you think will do these things to attract more people to join the NPA?
Well, we have the nice looking infographic that you made, but obviously that's not the extent of it. I could have been better about this, and I'll admit that, but I'm gonna go into like my little old man here for a second as far as an S. I remember the days, and I know some orgs still do this. I remember the days where they used to like make a production out of like every op pretty much. Like people would go on NS forums and it would be like a point of pride to like list everybody out, and they would do dispatches. I think now they still do a lot of the Raider orgs. But it used to be like more of a regular thing, and that's just kind of how you kept up with what was going on in R&D. instead of people talking on Discord. Back then it was Skype, and we had dispatches and posts on the forums and stuff like that. I think that was always really cool to see what others in the game were doing on like the NS forums. We don't have very much of that now. Definitely not a standard practice for us to post those kind of ops on the NS forums. And I'm not saying like ongoing ops because that would obviously present like OPSEC issues. I'm talking about ops that have already concluded, where we have the list of names of people who participated in this and that. The first step towards getting people in the door is number one, giving them a reason to actually even want to participate. What are some of the high points of the NPA? Well, number one, it's a good camaraderie sort of thing. I met a lot of people in TNP that I probably wouldn't have otherwise interacted with if I wasn't in the NPA. So yeah, the possibility to make friendship, uh, the appeal of working towards a common goal, like all these things could be highlighted or at least promoted to a greater extent than they are. And the ways that you do that, it includes like personal outreach, talking to people who you think might enjoy it and say, hey, come give us a try in the NPA. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's cool, but why not give it a try? There's not really any it's not like a do or die situation. Like we'd love to have more people in the NPA, but I think part of it is, just showing them that hey, this can be a fun time. And if you like it, hey, maybe you want to stick with it, things like that. So we can post on NS forums to kind of like, puff out our chest a little bit, do some promotion that way. We can do some dispatches. We're really good at upvoting dispatches. We've got that figured out. Pretty good at upvoting dispatches. So maybe we can get the upvote squad on it, the informal upvote squad on some of those dispatches. And then we can also, just do more like private outreach, like I was talking about. Confed, I think during his term did a little bit of it, and I think that's how we got some of the people in the past. We would just talk to them in DMs, like leveraging personal connections to be like, hey, would you like want to do this? I know we did that sort of during one of our like call to arms. We got some residents who usually aren't NPAers, but they, wanted to turn out in support of what we were doing. And they were quite helpful. I think Scarborough was one of them at the time, and he's since gone on to join the NPA. And then Lowe was another one who was credited as a mercenary but wanted to help the cause. I think there's multiple ways to get people involved besides like just pushing them, hey, join the active updating force right now. Like there's other ways to get people, number one, interested, and number two, kind of just like funnel them into that. Hey, is this fun? Do I enjoy this? Like, is this something I want to do? Is this a good way for me to contribute? And once you start putting those ideas in people's minds, I think the rest kind of takes care of itself.
All right. So now let's talk about war strategy. In his platform, Breton advocated for an aggressive expansion in NPA operations to hit back against our enemies. I have a relevant quote here. I want our opponents to worry about every operation they conduct. While they are over to the left doing attack run, we are in their role-play region, spray painting the walls and reciting the B movie. When they are holding a region, we are delegate tipping their allies. Simone, on the other hand, wants to try negotiations on our terms before hitting our enemies with full force if negotiations fail. So, compared to them, what is going to be your approach to the war as delegate?
It sounds great, doesn't it? It really does, and I wish that that's all it really required us to do because it'd be so much better, I think, for everyone involved if we could just do that and we could really make them worry. Um, to that, I kind of say, have you seen BOM? Have you seen TBH? Have you seen these regions that we've sanctioned? Look at their player base and tell me if you think that they are inclined to be worried about anything. Like if anything, and this isn't like news. I think we're more worried about what they're gonna do because they're the ones who are attacking our allies, right? Um, and obviously the main approach you have to this for me is number one, you always need more people. Wars can't be fought if you don't have manpower. The militia was good in the sense of when it was created, we saw a lot of uptick in recruitment. That obviously wasn't going to last. I don't think anyone expected that to last. I talked about that in my campaign. But in addition to just getting more people, putting more WAs out on the battlefield, you also have to use the alliances that you have. I spoke about this in one of my answers to you, talking about like building new embassies and alliances, and I was talking about how I specifically really value alliances with regions that actually are standing with us in the war. I think it's very important that we oppose them in all corners that we possibly can. And that also means that like internally we have to be on our game as far as like just doing the little things to the best effect possible. Whether that's voting in the WA to stop their queue stuffing sort of things that they've been doing as of late, or taking away their shiny badges in the WA. Like, see, defense, we think, oh, updating, and that, like, the fight ends at update, but it doesn't. And we see that it doesn't because uh, if they're not del tipping someone or attacking Europe or attacking the Wellspring, like they just put something in the WA that obviously isn't going to be to our interest. So we have to take a more holistic approach to it, I think. And you, of course, yeah, you just need more manpower. I don't think it's particularly realistic to say that like, oh yeah, they're gonna worry every single time they do an op because I just one look at these people tells you that that's not the kind of folks you're dealing with. Like, I just don't think that that's reflective of the reality of it, and I really wish it was. I really do wish it was. But from the experience that I've had in R&D, I don't think that that's particularly likely to happen. And I know that there's even some talks of like some people talking about like, hey, if the RA wants us to cease hostilities, like here's how we go about it. I would discourage the RA against looking to cease hostilities. I think it's very fresh in a lot of people's minds what's happened. I think Europe was a really good example of this. They don't care about values such as neutrality. It does not matter who you are. If you are TNP or TNP adjacent, they will come after you. So the only strategy that makes sense to me is to band together with like-minded regions, including the frontier regions, and to form a broader front against BOM, to just make membership there as unattractive as possible. And you have to make the grass look greener on the other side, otherwise no one wants to go to the other side. So that involves us being better in what we do here, in addition to just putting pressure on the battlefield. It's something that encompasses everything because that's how you got to do it.
All right. So yeah, I can see that. So now I have questions for you about foreign affairs. So first, you wrote that with regards to frontiers, you would evaluate on a case-by-case basis to decide if it's worth it to reach out for a partnership or an alliance. But what about feeders? Do you plan to review and make any changes to our existing relationship with them?
There have been a few developments lately in our relationships with feeders. So, I mean, there's five of them, so we'll just go on the other four that aren't us, obviously. I'll just go in no particular order. TWP, I believe to be a really good partner and just a generally nice region for us to be on good terms with. I really am fond of the TWPers, and I think that their region's quite good and a valuable ally for TNP. So I would say that continuing to strengthen the relationship there is important for me. Um, Same goes with the NPO. The NPO, I think, has a lot of untapped potential. I think they've come a long way in the last couple of years. Because I remember back when the whole, NPO Delinda S thing happened. Not to bring up old wounds, but yeah, I definitely don't think they're the same community that they used to be, just like we aren't the same community that we used to be. I think they're a valuable partner in the war. Our Pax Polaris, I say this word wrong. I believe Nutmeg, who's in the audience right now, has gotten to tell me that this is wrong, but is it Occidens? Occidens? It's the PPO, the group. I think that that's tremendous. I definitely want to keep going with that because even though they're not in the modern gameplay compact anymore, they're still valuable TNP allies. So that's two feeders of the four out of the way. And then the other ones we have are TSP and TEP. TEP. Oh, that's a fun one. We saw what happened with that. Uh, the long and short of this is that you won't see me crying about the repeal of Nest. Um, I, I mean, I'm not sure that that agreement was worth the storage space it took on the servers to host the text, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm not really interested in anything TEP related. And that's fine, because as far as I'm aware, they aren't interested in anything TNP related. As for TSP, I was there the last time that relationship deteriorated. They don't oppose us, which means that sort of kind of like by extension, I mean, they're pretty anti BOM themselves, so I'm fine to work with them. Am I going to go out of my way to do that? Probably not. But I mean, I would be fairly agreeable to collaboration and cooperation with them in the interests of fighting back against Raider Unity. But aside from that, I think that there's still things that need to be mended in that relationship, and it's not something that can come from us. It's something that comes from time and a little, and if they want to, then that requires effort on their part. That's just my personal take on it. But yeah, pretty much. I definitely value NPO, definitely value TWP. TSP, I respect where they are at, and TEP, I find to be very unserious, and we saw how that went. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So next question is, one of Kashovia's initiative for foreign affairs was the creation of case studies as a guide for diplomats to study and gain insight from. In his midterm report, Comfort also mentioned that the first case study was nearly complete. However, you did not mention this initiative in your platform, so I'm curious. Will you continue the project if you are elected?
Yeah, I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. Anytime you give people like the opportunity to learn something, foreign affairs is one of those areas we've always had trouble like getting people to a higher level in because it's not like HA where if you do the tasks and you're good at the task, then hey, now you know all the tasks. So would you like to run the tasks? Man, that's a lot of times of me saying tasks, right? But for FA, it's a little bit different. One of the main things I've discussed with ComFed, and I know that Cash and him have been working to do this a little bit over the past term, is make it to where it's more like objectives based as opposed to like staff productivity. I think that's just generally a more optimal direction for us. Staff productivity in the sense that like yeah, people are ambassadors and they distribute publications, but as far as like objectives that FA wants to get across, I think that that's something that maybe requires a little bit more of specialization in how we teach people about that. Part of it is the diplomatic network visualization that I do plan on continuing. So, as far as the case studies, I won't claim to be intimately familiar with how that is progressing along just because I've been in defense and comms mostly for the last little bit. But yeah, I don't see any harm in having it continued. It's definitely something where if it's already almost done, why would I put a stop to it now? Like sure, if it benefits us at all, I think that that's a step up from not having it. So I'm totally cool doing that.
Okay, that's great. So now we will move to home affairs. Now, I have one question for you. For Home Affairs, you propose recruitment as an offensive option, using it to take away our enemies' VA nations, attack the creed, and gain support for our cause. Of course, this could lead to retaliation and potentially escalate into a recruitment war, so to speak, between TNP and our enemies. Are you prepared for that scenario if it happens?
People always talk about like the risk for escalation about things, but again, if they're willing to do the first and second thing that you think they might not be able to do, then I don't see any reason why they wouldn't do the third. I fully expect that they would do things like that, which is why the phrase turnabout fair play comes to mind. Yeah, I think that anytime you're facing off against people, sort of how I said before, you have to face them in all endeavors of this game, because as other people have, said before, oh, they don't have this like a conventional nation does. They don't have like these things that are, quote unquote, you can take away from them to beat them down. But I do think that there are some things that you can take away from them, which is their access to WA numbers, the ability of their members to do certain things in various communities. I think you can limit that. Like I do think that there are things that you can do. Whether or not they care about those things, I mean, I can't dictate that to them. No one can. But I do think, you at least have to consider it as an option, and you at least have to be willing to go that far, because if you don't go that far, I think it's a missed opportunity. And that does require that TNP takes a more offensive stance. But I mean, so far, I think we've been far from the aggressors in this. I think if more, we've been pushed on the defensive. So if people are interested in seeing sort of like the tides of war turn, I think those sort of measures are necessary.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. Uh, so your World Assembly Affairs plans look solid, and I don't have any question for that. But our audience can always ask it in the NBS tech channel, and I can come
Yes.
back to it later.
If you guys have any
Now,
questions to ask me, NBS text, go ahead and at me, and I will make sure that we answer those before the broadcast ends off here. Just a reminder, you
yeah,
guys can ask any questions you want, and I'll answer them.
Yeah, you can ask anyone that. So I have some miscellaneous questions for you. So first, delegate candidate Simone talked about creating new rewards like forum and Discord maps, ribbons, etc., to honor the service of those who have worked long, hard for our region. So do you have any plans to introduce a new reward system as well?
Um, unless cards, so cards is going to be reactivated. I do believe that, but it's not going to happen in the immediate future, as far as I'm aware. There are a few things you can do to reward people. Number one is the NPA Hall of Honor, which I helped create in the Ministry of Defense. So I talked about like our next inductee for that, but also I feel like it's very contained within like the private sections of the NPA's areas of the forum, like who's honored and for what. We only have two inductees, but I'd like to make that like a public-facing thread. Like, hey, these are our people. Here's the summary of their successes, like stuff like that. It's like the equivalent of monuments to people, I guess, but it's on a forum. So I know that other regions have that, like threads of like, oh, past delegates. Here's a little bio about them and stuff like that. To my knowledge, we haven't had that. I'd like to get us one of those for the NPA in particular. And then as far as just like general recognition goes, I actually like the idea of us doing like mini competitions in the ministries. And a good example of that is that back in March, I believe, in Home Affairs, we actually sort of had a mini competition for manual recruitment where Lion and Cash had basically said, hey, whoever recruits the most this month, like, here's a prize for you, and we're going to give you, like, this little badge that says, like, you're the top recruiter and this and that. And it was cool for a while because people were like sort of competing like who can do the most, and obviously all of the things that they were doing was for the region's benefit. So I like that. It's very easy for us to like create roles that say like TNP is top recruiter, like with stars and happy faces and stuff. Like just anything to keep morale up. That's very low cost to do. Like yeah, why not do that? It's a very good way to appreciate your people because, like I said, we don't have to be doing this, and any person who is willing to take the time to do so, I think, should be not only like rewarded but just appreciated for that. So anything we can do to like show more appreciation and stuff like that, yeah, I definitely think we should do that. There's no reason why we shouldn't.
All right, that sounds good. So my final questions, which I have also asked Simone this in his town hall. As you know, Delegate Kaschovia transition took quite a long time due to several factors, including our enemies' unendorsement telegram campaigns. So how will you respond if they launch another campaign to sabotage your transition?
Just go into it with the expectation that they will. Like my expectations of them is that I just assume that anything that they could possibly do that will be suboptimal for us, they will do. I would like. I mean, I respect war enemies to the extent that I think that that's what they would do if they like were really wanting to do it, and I believe that they're really about it. Is a good way to put it. I just expect that they're going to. I'm not going to worry about will they or won't they. I just think that they will, by default, which means obviously I have to have a response prepared for that. I think my personal editorial efforts are fairly effective. I think it changes the scope of things if I'm elected delegate because right now all my increased endo count is for the benefit of my personal nation. Whereas if I'm the delegate, then there's an argument that can be made that my personal nation's count is the region's best interest for like security purposes and whatnot, which allows me to tap into resources that I otherwise wouldn't have. Because I could act with more broad authority as far as like getting resources together. Obviously, I'll have the support of the Security Council if I'm elected, and the Vice Delegate. I'm sure I can strategize with them to make sure that we have a plan in place for that. But I'll continue doing the things that I've done before, and I've gotten better at it over time. With like manual telegrams, I know I've used stamps before. I'm not like adverse to using stamps. I personally don't mind. Like if I have to give Max Berry $5 to help me do whatever I need to do for this community, I don't care. Like sure, have your money, Max. um, and just getting number one native numbers. It's important that everyone's endorsing the delegate, but also we can do like dispatch alerts, we can do telegram alerts, we can do there's a third method I'm thinking of, like competitions and stuff like that, like offering rewards. If and when cards come back, I'd love to resume my lottery and stuff like that. I'll just like constantly look for creative solutions to help push us over the edge. I think what Cash did with the World Assembly reports, for example, was a great idea, and I'm going to continue doing it. I'm going to learn from him how to do it and how to put it all together every single week because I'd like to continue with that. I think it's worked. I think the numbers show that it has worked. So anything that we can do, I see as like better than us not doing it or anything, you know. So you just gotta have all those things coming together. And yeah, it's a lot of effort. And yeah, people are gonna try to ruin it. But honestly, as far as them being like enemies of the North, it'd be kind of weird if they didn't try to ruin it. So it's just something you gotta be aware of and address.
All right. So if push comes to shove, will you consider using the nuclear option, that is, allied military support and unendorsement messages to complete the transition if necessary?
Unendorsement messages of whom? Are you asking like
Like
run it on
Ghost,
like cash?
yeah. Ghost also asks people to endorse him during cash transition.
Yeah, that's a tactic used by the SC, but they only use it when you're in like the top three already or top four. It's not something that they use like when you're, like you'd have to be pretty close to the vice delegate in order for them to even consider doing that. Otherwise, it's not usually something we do. I think the plan now is, I think for anyone, what it'll usually be is that the RO position will just be elected delegate, and then the transition will proceed as normal. But yeah, once you get into the top three, I'm perfectly fine with. You don't want to take the delegates numbers down because then that hurts like our voting power. But if you only have to take it down for like maybe one or two updates and then it just kind of regroups, then I think that's fine. Yeah, that's just something that the SC and I will probably have to evaluate. But will I consider it? I mean, I think at that point it might become the most optimal play. But as far as like doing it as like a regular tactic. Oh, it's the transition now. Let's do this. Like, no, that'd be way too premature. I think it's something that happens like when you're in the very in stages of the transition.
Yeah, okay, so thank you. So that's the end of my questions. Uh, the audience doesn't have any questions,
Oh my
then
god, yes,
I think we
audience people, ask me things, please, if you have anything.
yeah,
Yes.
any questions?
Oh, I see Ruben typing. I'm looking at
Yeah,
the NBS text channel, guys. So I know there's a second one in the actual stage that's like a chat channel, but I am looking at the one that says NBS text.
that's
Are there specific regions you'd like to get closer to? Would you like us to get closer with? Ruben asks. It's hard to say like specific regions, obviously, because yeah, it does like matter who they are on far as like a case by case basis. I know that there's some regions who probably like adjacently stand for what we stand for. Names that come to mind. I like just fun regions who I could totally see us doing like culture events with. Include like Spiritus, like the folks at Spiritus. I think they're fantastic. Quite like them. I don't know if when you say like relations and stuff with, like I'm not saying like make a treaty with Spiritus. I'm just saying like do a culture event with them. Like yeah, they're cool people. I think we totally vibe with them, and I think that that'd be fun. As far as like just other random regions, I don't necessarily have any like in mind. Again, it's gonna come up with what works for us. I said in my campaign thread that like most regions who are interested in opposing, the tyranny of BOM, I think that they are sort of by default friends to the North. Not friends in the sense we're gonna ally you, but friends in the sense that like yeah, we can work with you as long as you're not like problematic. If you're not problematic and you want to oppose BOM, then I think you got a place amongst friends in a way. But whether or not we'll see like new embassies, new alliances, new and this and that, I think you kind of got to evaluate that in the moment. And I'm sorry if that sounds like a cop out answer, but it's really not my place yet to say yeah this region let's build like a relationship with them because I have to have all that information in front of me before I'm willing to like make that call. And it's something that I would talk with the CFR on the Committee of Foreign Relations and stuff like that because we have experienced people besides me who know what they're talking about. So it'll be a fun time if we can I mean, getting more allies. Astoria? Astoria what?
Oh yeah, that's the Raider region, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I just like there was no context. It just said, yeah, no, no, thank you. And it's like if you put Sophia, no, thank you. Who do I
Who
endorse
do
for
you endorse
delegate?
for delegate?
That's a funny question. I guess implicitly myself. Can I endorse? Is that a thing? I don't know. I feel like it's weird to be like, yeah, I endorse myself. It's like, well, duh, yeah, of course you do. But yeah, sure, me. Why not? It'd be kind of weird if I was like, yeah, no, actually, I don't think so. Who do you
Excellent.
endorse for vice delegate? You endorse Osk? Nah, 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 there's three candidates for vice delegate, and if you ask me, one of them is serious and has like the actual credentials. Hi Chipotle, yes, support Chipotle for vice delegate. I think it's fairly uncontroversial, unless you're just really into Oskabot. Yeah, he's not running. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He's not running. What are some? Oh, so okay. This is a fun one. I expected this was gonna happen. All right, guys. I've been asked by Ferdinand IV. What are some of your main critiques about Simone's campaign? Okay. Um. So, first of all, I definitely respect how widely recognized and acclaimed he is in the WA, specifically the GA community. Like, I totally respect that, right? I think he's been a good minister for us. I really do. Um, as far as his campaign, there are a few things that strike out to me as glaring issues. In addition to just the insistence upon putting out more cabinet positions, which I think is the opposite thing that we need. There's also just a lot of, hey, we're going to do this, but you don't really get into the specifics of how. I think the key performance indicators are a bit weird because they're not things that the delegate has direct control over, so it seems a little bit weird to stake whether or not you're willing to stay in office on these metrics that you don't have direct control over. Like, I don't know. Personally, for me, if I knew I had 100% control over something, then I'd be willing to make that bet. But with game mechanics and the changes being made on site and stuff like that, I don't think you can necessarily bank on those things working as you should. Yeah, you can do things to increase the share of WA votes, but at the end of the day, like, it's not solely in your control. And he says, like, oh yeah, if this specific number isn't what I want it to be, then okay, I guess I'm no longer going to be delegate. Like, I find that to be a bit of a mistake to commit to, like, just living or dying by this KPI sort of thing. I also think that he sort of overly inhibits the ability of the delegate by saying, oh yeah, all of this we're going to make it like the RA is going to need to hear about this, or this body is going to need to hear about this. I mean, it's good for transparency's sake, but the delegate, especially in times of war, should not be paralyzed to like act or respond to things. I think it's good to have transparency in the RA. Don't get me wrong. That's one of the reasons why I'm pushing my biweekly war reports idea. Like, I want to encourage that dialogue and communication and exchange between the citizens and their government. But I don't think sitting on your hands until the RA says, like, yeah, sure, go do this. Like, I don't think that's a good idea. He's very hands off, which is the opposite thing I think we need. And some of his real life experiences that he tries to relate to being delegate, I personally don't see the connection. I find that they're a little bit shoehorned in there. And what it really boils down to for me is I think a lot of it's like empty platitudes. Like, he says, like, oh yeah, we're going to do it because we're going to do it together and it's going to be great. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't exactly tell me how we get there. Um, I wish it did more of that. I really do, because I've looked at his campaign and I've reviewed it. I think he's a good minister, but I don't think he's nearly as well rounded as I would like him to be. I hope that's fair. I mean,
Right.
I try to be fair and respectful about it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not a great idea to appoint 11 plus cabinet ministers. That just seems like a bad idea.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah. So, uh, yeah.
16. It's
So
16.
16 cabinet members total.
Oh no, no. Okay, okay. To put it in perspective, we have 6 ministers plus the delegate. It's 7 bare minimum right now, right? And there were terms in the past. Let me just illustrate this for you guys. This is not even an attack on him. I just want people to think about this. We have had issues in the past with executive staffing where we needed 7 people, right? And there have been 2 areas of those 7 like we've had trouble filling. Do you think that having 16 is gonna be sustainable? Like, for anyone. And more importantly, if you're the delegate and you're appointing people, then that means that they are government officials by the way that the law works. If you appoint that many government officials to serve in those roles to have cabinet access, then that also means that the laws about staying to one branch, like multiple branches, the executive and checks and balances and whatnot, that now applies to 16 individuals as opposed to only applying to 6 or 7. So it limits the talent that could possibly be going in other branches. That's something I've thought about, and it's like, in addition to that just not seeming like a good idea, it just seems very impractical to me personally. So I don't really know how that's going to work, but yeah. I didn't know we were up to 16. Thank you for counting that, Ruben. But
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
last call. Does anyone have any more questions? If not, we can go ahead and end this off.
All right, then.
All
If
right.
no one has any more questions, someone's typing.
All right. Well, so thank you for everyone for being here and listening me out. Thanks for bearing with us due to the technical difficulty, and I hope that you got some of your questions answered, got a little bit more perspective on where I'm going with this, what I'm thinking. Thank you to Picairn for agreeing to host. I'm glad that we could get this
Yeah.
recorded. And yeah, this is going to be NBS Radio, signing off. Bye.